Is this really the bottom line on this? Because everything about Marion's character, particularly his military acumen, would tell me that this is absolutely wrong when you look at this. So let's do some further research. But not before looking at what Sumter thought about the whole deal. He sent to Sumter writing to General Greene, no assistance from General Marion. Mortifying to me after such pains to be deprived of accomplished review. This letter was written on March 28th, was pretty much an old-fashioned tail chewing in the very polite way that folks can do that in correspondence back then. Okay, let's start with that original letter. The letter was sent on the 20th of February. Again, you're already in the attack, and you said timely assistance portends much good. I'm here to tell you, folks, there's just absolutely no way that this made sense to me. I talked to you about Sumter went to Fort Granby, he went to Belleville, he went to Mount Ferry, he crossed at Flood's Plantation, he attacked Fort Watson, and he writes his next letter to Marion from Forest Plantation. Okay? And why did he have to write that letter? Because he had finally received a response from Marion. If you look at this, and I don't know what route the messenger took. This is just here's a probable idea. Messenger's probably going to stay south of the Santee, take the usual routes to go to Swamp Fox country over here near Snow's Island. Does he know where Marion is? No. Somebody as elusive as the Swamp Fox, where are you going to find them? Good question. But the messenger leaves here on the 20th of February, comes down here, comes up, probably crossing some of the Black River. He's gone some 140 miles by the time he gets into this area here, thanks to MapQuest. Where's the Swamp Fox? He actually found the Swamp Fox, let's see, somewhere right along in here, I believe it was. Green's Plantation, near Indiantown. The 26th of February. It took 6 days for the messenger to find Marion. So what did Marion do when he received the letter? Did he punt? This is what Marion said, writing to him on the 26th of February. Actually, 2 messengers had come in that day. Probably the first messenger that came in from Fort Granby, and then the second messenger probably sent later on when Sumter was somewhere vicinity Belleville. And he says, I wrote you this morning, and find by your bearer that you decide that you desire I make a junction with you on the south of Santee. Colonel Watson's force is now on the high hills at Colonel Richardson. Too strong for me to remove. But I continue. I shall, however, go as near him as possible and endeavor to cut off any foraging parties and be in the way of hearing further from you. I wish to hear from you and shall be on the 29th at Skapore on the head of the Black River. Marion responds to Sumter. He gives him intel, not only telling him where Colonel Watson's force is, he gives him additional intel, telling him 150 men left Georgetown and were headed in his general direction. And he also tells him exactly where he's going to be. Now, there is an error in this message. He says, I'll be there on the 29th. Was not leap year that year, so he actually meant the first day of March, not the 29th of February. So when you read this, the first thing I thought was, well, wait a minute, Marion did respond. Not only did he respond, he is working actively to try to get with him, with Sumter. The enemy has a vote in everything you do. We've heard several folks say that, hey, Marion said that enemy activity kept him from being able to do anything. Well, first of all, when Rawdon left to go after Sumter, he wrote to Lord Cornwallis and says, I've taken measures which I hope will prevent Marion from troubling us anymore. That was sending Watson after Marion. 7th of March, crossed the Wateree. On the 25th and on the 26th, continuing marching towards Nelson's Ferry. Okay? You've got a British force besides Watson now operating on the east side of the Wateree River, moving down into the area that's the operational area that Sumter would like Marion to go through to be able to meet up with him. And he says, our movement prevented Marion from attempting to interfere. Now, up here it says Sumter had ordered Marion to advance to Managos. What I take from that, and at least the inference from me in my military mind, is that probably a message was captured from Sumter to Marion during that time that was asking him to go to Managos. And with that being the case, Rawdon and Watson were in position to be able to screen and prevent Marion from reaching Sumter. Marion over here, vicinity of Indiantown. During that time on the 26th, you have Sumter trying to cross the Santee. Around Richardson's up here, that's where you have Rawdon. And then up here, correction, Watson and Rawdon coming down from Camden. On the 28th, from Forest Plantation, takes 6 days for a letter to get to Marion. Takes 2 days for Marion's response to get to Sumter at Forest Plantation. Okay? Actually, there were 2 letters that were sent. One was on the 26th. We've just seen it said that he would be at the Scape Ore on the 29th. And then instant here means a letter that was written the same day, the 28th. We don't know where that letter is. We don't know what the verbiage of the letter is, other than it says that glad to hear you advance this way. That's good. Where was Marion? By his orderly book, on the 28th, he was north of King Street. That's why it only took about a day for it to get to it. I shall wait impatiently for your interview, he says, after he says, come this way. He sends that letter to Marion saying, I'm waiting here for you, come to me. We don't know what supposedly Marion responded with a letter on the 2nd. We don't know, we don't have that letter. But he does say that he's sorry that they're so far out of the way. And let's see. He also says here that the letter of the 2nd, informing me that the number of your men were found to be very weak and the enemy near at hand in force. So whatever the letter was that Marion sent on the 2nd of March was telling him, hey, we got a lot of bad guys out here. I don't have that many folks, but I'm trying to get to you. However, Sumter, as I stated earlier, somewhere around the 28th or the 1st of March, thought that the pressure was too much coming from the British, that he moved to the north. Policed up his family. By the 4th, he's at Bradley's plantation. He's still trying to communicate with Marion. And as he says, that he sends this letter again on the 4th of March and says, I hope to have the favor of by tomorrow night, which means a consultation with him. So he thinks by sending this message on the 4th of March that Marion will be able to get it and at least go to him by the next evening. All this stuff is confusing, isn't it? All these letters back and forth, all these where were people. Let's see if this simplifies it a little bit. Thanks to Dave Nealon and Charles Baxley for the great work they did on this before. Marion receives this initial letter from the 20th on the 26th. On the 27th, according to his orderly book, he's up here. Don't know why he's up there. Don't know if it's just a command group, who it is that has moved up there, but hey, orderly book says he's here. About 80 miles from there to here, where he's on the 28th to the 1st of March. On 1 March, Marion is exactly where he said he would be on this letter of the 26th. He's at the head of the Black River at Skateboard Swamp. He gets word from down here when Sumter says, "Come to me." Actually, he was in this location when Sumter initially wrote that. By the time Marion gets it, he's up here. It has taken at least a day for Marion to get the letter, and Marion starts moving south. Everything in my military mind tells me that Marion was responding to the message from Sumter. He was moving south to meet up with him because Sumter said, "Come to me," and that I'm impatiently awaiting you. What he did not know is that Sumter, because of the threat of the force from Rawdon and Watson down here, had started moving to the north. Two roads that come up through here. On the 2nd of March, we have Marion is at Hungry Hall Plantation. They stay the night there, or at least they stay some period of time there. They literally passed each other. By the time you get up here to March the 3rd, here is where Sumter is looking for Marion. March the 3rd, Marion spends the night at John Candy's plantation on the Santee. They have marched past each other. And so on the 4th, when Sumter talks about, "I'm sorry to see we are so far removed," that's because he has finally found out that Sumter is here and he's up there. Amazing, isn't it? And Marion did nothing to support Sumter. Marion next crosses at Murray's Ferry, and he comes to his uncle James Cord's plantation over south of the Santee. Why would he do that? Again, I have to kind of rely on my military training and thinking that the same forces that were probably threatening Sumter here with Rawdon and Watson are probably impacting the thought process of Marion as well. So he comes over and he puts a river between him and those British forces. However, the last letter, the one that was written on the 4th, Sumter wanted Marion to join him. Remember, hey, by tomorrow night, let's get together. The letter that was written on the 4th up here was not received by Marion until the 7th. At least his response was written on the 7th, and he seemed to be pretty good at responding to the correspondence that comes in. If you look at the Marion papers, again, Dave Nealon has done an unbelievably outstanding job of pulling together the Marion papers. And when you look at that, and you look at the other correspondence that Marion was doing, he is not only talking to Sumter, he is talking to the British, he is talking to folks all over the place. He is keeping up a very steady correspondence with everybody. And so when he gets this letter saying, "Hey, come to me," somewhere around the 6th or 7th of March, on the 7th of March, they come up and they're crossing Murray's Ferry again, heading north. When he does that, the next thing that happens is he runs into a guy named Zach Canning from Camden, had scouts out and they sent these scouts and back to Marion, telling him that Watson was over around Nelson's Ferry in force. I really think that Marion crossed Murray's Ferry. He was trying to go up to link up with Sumter, but once he got the intel, he said, scratch that, and he heads over here, and on the 8th of March, has the first engagement of the Bridges campaign at Waibu Swamp. He did not like any more of his attempts to either help or to not help Sumter. Sumter writes about it later. He's all irritated. But I will tell you, in my personal opinion, I think that Marion did what he could. Now, I will also tell you that if you talk about he didn't write about the Rounds campaign, heck, he didn't write about the Bridges campaign at all. I've at least seen one story where he responded to Green and said, "I don't have the paper to be able to write to you." Maybe that was a factor. Don't know. Perception versus reality. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, perception is reality, right? And the perception that I have read in all the secondary sources tell you that Francis Marion did not do anything to assist the Gamecock. Let's look at the several things that have come out of these allegations. Marion was disgruntled about Sumter's command. You betcha he was. Marion was a lieutenant colonel with the Continental Commission. He never resigned his commission. Thomas Sumter did, around 1778. Then later on, when they were throwing promotions around or whatever on the militia side of things, you have both Marion and Sumter were militia colonels, and the next thing you know, hey, Sumter is a brigadier general given a commission by Governor Rutledge, and it was a full month or more later before Marion got the same accolade and promotion. Would that have irritated you? Maybe. Probably would have irritated most people. Marion was of a different makeup militarily than Sumter was. Sumter was very charismatic. Sumter had great plans. Sometimes I think Sumter probably did not have as much attention to detail in some of the areas that would have been to the benefit primarily of his troops. He was surprised at Fishing Creek. He was surprised at Fish Dam Ford. Even though Fish Dam Ford kind of came out pretty good for him, technically, if somebody on the British side had actually known what the plan was ahead of time, they probably would not have had that failure. But I will tell you, folks will say that Sumter, he wasn't the guy out on the guard post or whatever.